Mary, we're about to tell you a story about a teenage girl and a teenage boy and an alleged rape. How the case was handled by King County prosecutors has been subject to criticism from the family and advocates for survivors of sexual assault.
So we're looking for a pair of white socks.
It is the early morning hours of September 6th, 2021.
I literally just told them, because I was stranger rape.
Seattle police officer Mia Wynn and 3 others canvass a Seattle park.
This is good. There's only been one before this that we actually had a good scene and good suspect.
They take photos, cans, hairs, just 90 minutes after a 16-year-old girl ran from the area and said she was choked, beaten, and raped by another teen she had just met.
She was crying, and she was covered in dirt.
The girl's dad, who we are shielding as to protect the alleged victim's identity, says the teenager had attended a high school party with 200 kids at that park. Witness testimony suggested the alleged attacker, also a high schooler whom she had never seen before, had encouraged her to drink alcohol and led her to a secluded wooded spot away from the crowd.
She went straight to the emergency room at Swedish Hospital. She submitted for a SANE exam. She was interviewed by Seattle police. It was a long night, but she did everything you're supposed to do as a rape survivor.
Documents would conclude there was bruising to the teen's legs, neck, and arms.
She's got redness around her wrists, which is consistent with her being held down in her account of events.
Julie Kays worked in the King County Prosecutor's Office and in the Juvenile Division as well, prosecuting sexual assault cases. She's now representing the girl's family.
And then what happened was the system abjectly failed her.
Kays points out there was also DNA evidence to suggest a crime occurred, although the alleged suspect said, "We didn't have sex," and that was in an interview nearly 6 months after the alleged rape. How do you explain this time gap between when the alleged victim was interviewed and when the suspect was interviewed? Because there seems to be months that went by.
I can't explain it. When you get one of those cases on your desk, it is scorched earth time. You are looking into every avenue because you're worried, this is a stranger, is this gonna happen again? I mean, these are the cases that keep you up at night as a prosecutor, or should.
The King County Prosecutor's Juvenile Division office declined to charge the case, citing the presence of alcohol, consensual kissing, and that it was extremely unlikely that the state could overcome a consent defense. Yet Kays suggests, despite forensic evidence to the contrary, the Juvenile Division's Chief Deputy Prosecutor, Jimmy Hung, whom she has known for years, did little to advance the case. She provided an email from Hung in August of 2022 in which he admitted to never executing a warrant on the suspected rapist's phone or texts or the teen's Snapchat account or metadata, or sought fingerprints of the alleged suspect from the crime scene. What does that tell you?
Well, it tells me that the investigation was incomplete. He took pictures during the course of the sexual assault. His phone could have been the subject of a search warrant. And the reason why a search warrant is better than someone saying, oh, well, here's a couple pictures and handing them over, is you really get all the raw data. He was with a group of buddies. I mean, what conversations were going on, what text messages were going on.
But victim advocates argue that the case is just one example.
I think that actually maybe bled.
Of a trend within the division that is putting justice for rape survivors on hold.
Older children, so those 16, 17 years old, are more likely to report being sexually assaulted. They're also less likely to be believed.
Lorraine Lynch is with the King County Sexual Assault Resource Center, which provides counseling and care for victims and receives a bulk of financial support from the county. She says the criminal division already has long waits for prosecution of sexual assault, and the prosecutor's office own dashboard signifies the caseload.
It's a long time to ask a survivor to wait or to stay engaged in the legal process. And we talked about the average age of our clients during that snapshot is 16.
But KSARC, as it's called for short, is now openly questioning how the Juvenile Division is handling sexual assault cases. According to an audit by KSARC given to KOMO News, there were 227 juvenile sexual assault cases sent to prosecutors in 2022, but 48% were given statutory referrals and another 25% were declined. Charges were only filed in 17% of cases in the Juvenile Division, per KSARC. We asked Hung to comment. You essentially run the Juvenile Division.
That's a simple way to put it, yeah.
Isn't that a discouraging number to survivors, that you're only charging 17% of cases?
It depends on how you look at it, Chris. I guess, like, in some ways, I can suggest that that should be encouraging for us as a society, because the reality is that there are a lot of situations that occur where we want people who feel like they've been harmed or victimized to step forward and report. And so if you get more reporting, there are also times when people might be describing something that was uncomfortable or something that was disturbing and something that we may be able to remedy and repair that harm in the community, but the circumstances did not rise to the level of a legal crime.
Hung does not dispute the small percentage of prosecutions.
I can also spin it that if all of a sudden we had a very high filing rate, but a lot of not guilty findings, a lot of dismissed cases after trial, would that leave the victim community more encouraged or discouraged, Chris? Right?
So you know Julie Kays.
I do. We tried cases together, yeah.
So I've talked to Julie.
Julie was in my wedding.
All these questions that she listed in the email about what sounds like basic stuff when you read through it.
Sure.
Checking cell phones, getting warrants on phones, getting warrants on the Snapchat, getting warrants on the texts. The answer was no. You hadn't done that.
Yeah. I think any prosecutor who's done this long enough knows that in every case, you can spin your wheels and try and find every little shred of evidence possible, because there's always more evidence that you can get. Okay, Chris? The thing is that at some point, a case is what it is, and there's nothing that's going to change what the case is. And in this case, what was the most problematic and difficult thing to overcome is that we believed this victim. We believed what she was telling us. During the interview that she had while Ms. Kays was there representing her, her answers to our questions and the detective's questions led us to the conclusion that we, one, could not prove that a rape occurred, and two, that what she described is not legally defined as a rape.
The evidence is strongly suggestive of a pattern and practice of ignoring victims when they come forward to report sexual assaults, of declining the cases.
And what's apparent is this isn't just our daughter. I'm very proud of our daughter. I am proud of the way that she handled herself in the moment. She is a warrior, and she doesn't want to see this happen to someone else.
Which is why he will continue to raise the question, just like the alarmed advocates.
Thanks, y'all.
And even those police officers at the scene.
Sometimes I'm like, this is why we're police officers. For calls like this.
What does it really take to find justice? Hung does tell me that this case was reviewed by multiple prosecutors and they jointly made a decision to not charge this case, and he welcomes anyone to take a second look at his investigation and what his department has done.
Chris, such a gut-wrenching story. Those charging numbers, are we talking about a staffing issue? Why are they so low?
Hung says that he used to only have one prosecutor in his office looking at sexual assaults. He says there are now 3. He says unequivocally this is not a staffing issue.
What about a backlog issue? We've talked about case backlogs before, not enough people in the office.
Yeah, Mary, he says, again, according to Hung, the answer is no, and that in his division, they have a 0 backlog policy.
And so where are we now? Is the case still open?
Yeah, as far as what Hung has told me, I mean, you saw that email and the question of whether he was following up on anything. He says that they have, in fact, followed up on the DNA samples, but as far as the cell phone technology, the metadata, all of the other things that Kays was asking for, he says they have not followed up on.
All right, KOMO senior reporter Chris Daniels, thanks so much for that story, and we know you're going to stay on top of it and let us know if anything at all changes. Thank you.